send them in, and they promptly lost them. They blamed it on you for not sending them in, made you resend it. You send them in again, and said, I'm sorry, your documents are stale. You need to pull new versions of your bank statements, this and the other. And you might get an answer in 6 or 7 months. And you may say, okay, congratulations, you're approved for a 10% reduction in monthly payment. Well, you lost your job. 10% is not going to help you do anything. And you wait 6 or 7 months, and meanwhile your foreclosure clock is moving forward. And there were people who literally got the good news, hey, we can help you lower payment, but oh, you just lost your house last Friday? Sorry. It was an absolute nightmare. People who really wanted to save their homes could not get any relief from the servicers. A few did, but most didn't. It was a horrible, horrible process. It was incredibly stressful and frustrating. And there's people in tears trying to save their home who couldn't, because the servicers were just so incredibly difficult to work with. And a lot of it was the rules. Congress created rules in a hurry that were incredibly complicated on how servicers would look at a person and try and figure out which way to give them first aid to fix their critical situation. It was a horrible mess. Today couldn't be more opposite. Today you literally call up your servicer and you just say, well, on the phone, I think I have COVID. Stop. You don't get a 10% reduction, you go to 0 payment. And they'll tell you, make 0 payment, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, until you get your job back and get back on your feet. You couldn't imagine, there's nothing to sign, no paperwork, you just tell them on the phone and you immediately get it. It couldn't be any easier, and the amount of help couldn't be any more. I mean, it's like, how about pay 0 and live in your house for free, and we'll give you a long time to find a job to get back on your feet. And when you get back on your feet, we're going to make you pay all the lost interest and payments. You can add that to the back of your mortgage, so just start back to your normal mortgage payment. I mean, you couldn't have an easier, quicker, more helpful process. That couldn't be more night and day than we had back in 2008. So that is another example that things could be more opposite. The other point is a lot of people who bought houses in 2008 did not even like the house they bought. They had no intent to live there, certainly not live there long term. I worked at Fannie Mae and we were looking where the houses were closed on. It was a newly built home in a subdivision, and the driveway went from the garage to the street, had a wooden power pole, 25-foot tall power pole, right in the middle of the driveway. Like, who would buy that house? This person thought, I don't care, it's pretty stupid to have a power pole, I'm going to buy it and I'll make a huge profit and I'll sell it in 6 months. So a lot of people, when the crisis hit and home prices dropped, like they had no connection to the home, they had no equity in the home, they had no emotional commitment, and they walked away. Today, I think people who bought houses in the last several years leading up to today, eyes were wide open. They weren't speculators looking to make a fast buck. Most of them were either investors or owners who planned to keep it for a long time. They did it knowing that things could go south. It's a night and day difference. So if you put these all together, this doesn't mean we're not going to have a correction. You'll never have anything, homes, stocks, bonds, anything where the price always goes up forever. That will never happen in anything financially. There's always things go up, have some correction down. It's a normal, healthy thing. It's a normal part of the business cycle. So yes, there will 100% be a correction in housing. It's normal, it has to happen, but it will not be 2008 all over again. And this is so much what borrows here. If literally we ended right now, I think this is the most important thing to share with you, just to give you solid facts. And everything here, you can back up with facts. You can Google anything on here and prove both sides of this ledger. So this is not opinion, these are facts. And I think it really would help you just, help a customer know that we're not hitting another 2008. Any comments, thoughts? Would anybody else have anything to add to this, or does this help you with the questions you're hearing? Yes.
So you mentioned payment shock from when people originally in 2008 kind of got in low and then it went high. Do you correlate that kind of the same with what's happened? Because to your point, the past few years, a lot of people did make the move, and people did get into positions where they're locked in the 2s and 3s, and so their interest rate essentially has bought them money. So now, do you feel like there's going to be a market freeze? And now there's a payment shock from the people that are departing their 275 or 3.25 you feel like that's gonna kind of backfire on not only the 4 million you're already short, but now people are gonna be less reluctant in actually moving?
Not sure if you hear the question in the back. The question was, with people having really low interest rates today, is there a different type of payment shock we face where they're going to be less likely to want to move, sell their home and move to another home? I think the answer is yes, a little bit. I think if someone just closed a loan 1 or 2 years ago, maybe a 2 or 3% loan, there's going to be a strong incentive just not to sell that, especially if they're thinking, I mean, 2 or 3 now, in the current market, 6 or 7. That's a big gap. So I think there will be people sitting tight, and that'll be one reason I think that we're going to have a slow winter for our industry. I think we'll pick up in the spring, is my opinion, for different reasons, but I think it will be a slow winter, and that'll be one of the big reasons for it. Here's what the offset is. So on one hand, you have a crazy low rate, and if you move today, like, wow, going from a 3% interest rate to a 6 or 7. But the other opposing force is for a lot of people in a post-COVID world, for some people, for some jobs, for some companies, they will have permanent ability to work at home, whether it's a few days a week or all the time. So there's already people today, I've heard people call certain areas boom towns. Well, they're calling them now Zoom towns, meaning that people are moving, like Nevada's a good example. There's people moving to Nevada who want there for the low taxes, and they just want to do a small little place. These are like more millennials and younger people who just, once they have computer screen and Wi-Fi, they're good. And then they're going to then travel around the world to do things when they have their vacations. They're going to just live in a low-cost, low-tax state. I think the answer to your question is that for people who can have more flexibility where they live, for many people, the home they live in today or the home they had before COVID was a compromise from where they wanted to live versus where they had to be with the commute to their job. And now that things change, you could literally switch states. Or you could, if you love the desert or beaches or mountains or country, whatever makes you happy. Maybe you had to live in the city for your job, you wish your heart was in a rural area. Well, now maybe you can work in a rural area and you can commute in once a month to a meeting and then Zoom in the rest of the time. So you will have lots of people who have the ability to reset their lives and kind of be to a happier place, whatever makes them happy, closer to the family, whatever it might be. So you have two competing pressures, which is like, wow, we don't have to live where we live now, we could move, but we have this low interest rate. So we have two competing pressures. My opinion is that they're going to sit tight for a couple of years. If the Fed gets inflation under control, which isn't yet, but I think it will happen, if rates come back down to the 5s and maybe 4s, they're going to be like, wow, okay, I didn't want to move from a 3 to a 7, but a 3 to a 4, a 3 to a 5, not so bad.
Yeah.
I've been here for a few years now, I've got some savings, so I got some benefit of this low rate. And even much as it's a low rate, like my kids live here, my heart is over here. I want to move from here to here because there's other happy factors that maybe are worth paying more. So I think the answer is it'll be a slowdown in purchase activity for a while with the ability to reset. Because also you may want to reset, even if you don't want to move locations. If you're able to work at home, I know lots of people who have been doing their Zoom calls from their kid's bedroom. And the idea of having an extra bedroom where they have a professional office is very powerful. Or they're not thrilled about going back to work out in a gym. They love to have a home gym and have their own equipment and not to worry about someone sneezing on them. So I think people upsizing and downsizing homes, even if they want to stay in the same geographic market, will create a lot of purchase activity as they up and downsize and want to buy the house. So I think there's a long-term fundamental about purchase activity being very strong in the future. But I do think for a year, 18 months, 24 months, what you just described will be very much a pressure holding back some movers. But I think it's going to hold them back 24 months, max. Not max, but I think about 24 months they're going to start moving. Just thinking that's a great question. I'm sorry, question?
It's okay. So the forbearance period that you described, how do you see that affecting sellers who take advantage of that process, say 2 months, and they're not seeing that difference at the end of the loan, but they're having to sell, wanting to sell? How do you see that factoring into the payoff?
So the question was, with forbearance, where people, all the payments they're not making get tacked on to the end of the loan amount, so they don't have to make the payments when they get out of forbearance. But the question is, if you're going to sell your property, how does that impact you? So it does increase your loan amount, so you are effectively, what you're not making in payments, you're reducing in your equity. So I think it will have maybe a little bit of an impact, not a lot. I think there will be some people who think, well, I have a little less equity, so, whatever they're hoping to get out of it, they're like, oops, I forgot my forbearance thing. So I'm sure they will literally forgot that this little thing was added on. And so they might have their friend who's a broker or appraiser say, here's what your value probably would be, maybe it's a neighbor, and so, okay, wow, I could get this if I sold, and all of a sudden they realize, well, it's not as much as I thought. So it might take a little bit out of people's sales, but I think those forces to want to move, if they want to upsize, downsize, or move to a different location, I think it won't take too long for those forces to compel them to want to move. So if a person asks you about where interest rates are going, the number one key factor that will drive that is, will the Fed get inflation under control, yes or no? We're at a really interesting crossroads right now. The Fed has hit the brakes 3 times harder than inflation. To me, the analogy is we're driving a car. The car's driving down the road, and the Fed is the driver, and we're passengers. And we want the car to keep moving and go forward, but we don't want it to go so fast that we crash. Well, the car's driving really fast, and we're like, slow down. So the Fed has tapped the brakes. In June, they did a 75 basis point raise. They did another one in July. They just did one last week. Those are the biggest brake taps. When they raise 75, usually the Fed raises 25. Then takes a month off, a couple months off, maybe raises another 25. But they did 75 back-to-back, June to July, another one in September. Those are record high brake stomping. And so the question is, they've stomped on the brakes, and will we see inflation slow down? So that PCE report we just saw, it's this Friday it'll be released, which will be August data. I think it's still too soon to show much. So the entire answer to the question is, the August reports won't show much. The reports that come out, the October report that comes out in November and December, in my opinion, those next 3 months, that's going to answer the question. If those 3 reports come out and inflation is still staying in the 8s, like it's been on CPI, or in the high 6s on the PCE, if those don't show any drop, or like a 0.1 only drop, it's going to tell the markets, maybe the Fed strategy is not working, and they need to stomp harder on the brakes. On the other hand, if those start showing a drop, and not just a 1 month drop, the next month report shows a drop, and you get a nice trend of 3 months in a row all coming down, that will create a huge sigh of relief for the markets that yes, the Fed raising interest rates is slowing down the economy, and yes, they're going to be able to control inflation. The whole idea of raising interest rates is to put everyone into a bad mood. Literally, when you have inflation, it's actually pretty simple. Why do prices go up? You have too much demand, which pushes prices up, or you have too little supply. So if you want to stop inflation, you have to either reduce demand or increase supply. The Fed cannot increase production in the United States. They don't have the ability to really do that directly. But they can try to reduce demand. And the idea is, if interest rates are high, we're all in bad moods, people aren't buying cars, you're not using financing, you're not maybe buying homes, businesses are not going to be expanding their factories because they use debt to do that. People won't be starting new businesses. It's just people are in a bad mood, we're grumpy, and we don't spend money. That's what they're trying to do. So if there's negative news headlines, the Fed's thrilled if there's negative news headlines. But there's people out there saying, is raising interest rates going to solve the problem? And here's that contrarian argument where maybe it doesn't. If you look at how much money is in consumers' pockets, all of us, how much money is in our, literally cash in our house, underneath our mattress, or in our checking accounts and savings accounts. Not talking about 401ks or investment accounts, just literally checkings and savings accounts in our homes. And if you're, watching Netflix shows, maybe it's underneath your sink in a duffel bag, but just our cash. That amount of cash we have today compared to before COVID, we're plus $4 trillion as American citizens cash, plus $4 trillion before COVID. How did that happen? Part of it is just, we always get more cash as the economy's grown, but a lot of it was government stimulus programs, all sorts of different types of put cash in people's pockets. Doesn't mean everyone has cash. There's some people who are in a hard position, but as a group, we're plus $4 trillion of cash in our pockets. Somehow, sometime, we're going to spend that cash, whether we buy things on Amazon, buy new cars, or whether we buy homes. So the fact there's so much cash sitting in people's hands, there's some economists thinking that cash is going to create inflation because it'll get spent somehow. Whether we spend it next month or next year, that can create inflationary pressure that doesn't change by interest rates rising. If we're sitting on this cash and rates go to the moon tomorrow, we still have the cash to spend. So there are people out there saying, when the Fed raises interest rates, is that going to even slow down inflation? In my opinion, it will. I think both of them matter, but I think the negativity of high interest rates and creating an economic mood and negativity and mood, which especially for us in the real estate industry is a negative mood,